Hello again, everybody. Today we are going to talk about text and typography in Photoshop. This is drawn from Chapter 7 of the Photoshop Classroom in a Book for 2024. Let's get going. Okay, so here I am. I've opened Photoshop and I am going to choose File, Open, 07 Start. I'll put this into Blackboard for you all if you'd like to follow along with this. I'm going to go ahead and rename this file so I can preserve the original one. I'll save this as 07 working. I'm going to come over here to the Photoshop format options, and normally we have the photography layout selected. That gives us the tools that we use when we're editing specifically for photography. But today we're going to choose graphic and web, because graphic and web displays the text and character options that we're going to use in today's lesson. You'll also notice that the toolbar has changed because this is a specific toolbar for the graphic and web format. And now we are going to create a clipping mask using type. When you clip a clipping mask to a layer, only areas within the clipping mask will be visible. So, for example, in this lesson, we are going to put a clipping mask over type in order to show a different, like a background behind that type. First, let's put a guide in so that we can better position the text as we place it on the image. If your rulers aren't showing, you can hit Command R, or you can choose View, Rulers. And because we're working on a document for print, let's make sure that the rulers are displayed in inches. So we'll come to Photoshop 2024 and choose Settings, and then Units and Rulers. Great, rulers are set to inches. I'll click OK, and I want to come over here into my ruler, and I'll click and hold and drag my ruler out, let's say to 4¼ inches, right there. And as you can see, the ruler tells me what the position, the inch position on the document is. 4¼ it's snapped to it. You can also maybe more easily set the ruler increment by coming over to your ruler and holding down the Control key and clicking on the ruler and select inches here. Now let's add some point type. There are two types of text in Photoshop. One is point type, which is intended for short lines of text anchored to a point in the document, and paragraph type, which is multiple lines of text contained in a text box that will the text will dynamically resize with the size of the box. So I'm going to come over here and I'll click on the pattern fill layer in this document, and I'll press the letter T on my keyboard to choose the type tool, or come over here and click T. Let's look at what our typeface is. We'll choose a serif typeface. Let's just go with the Times New Roman. And I'll type in 115 for the font size. I'll click on Paragraph and choose to center the text. And we'll change the tracking value here to 50. Tracking is the space between all the characters of text, where kerning is the space between individual letters. Then we'll move our cursor over here to our guideline. I'll click on it and I will type typecast. And in order to commit this text, in order to commit your type changes, click this check mark, or you can click off of the text in the desktop. Now we can see that the type layer, typecast, has popped up here. So we have a new type layer to which we can make any change. So now I'll come up here to that text again, double click it to edit it. And here in my contextual taskbar, I'm going to click on this arrow next to the font names, and I can now scroll and preview the various fonts that we have available here in Photoshop. And so let's just go with Garamond Pro. I'll click commit. There we are. I can see here I've actually got a different foreground color. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this type again, and I'm going to come over here to the toolbar and click on the default colors, black and white. So now we have black as the foreground and white is the background. And you can see that the text color has now changed to black. And we want our Myriad Pro font to be the bold version. And so now we are going to, actually I'm going to hit the V key to select my move tool just to drag this typecast layer down a bit. There we go. Sort of lined it up a little better on the guide too. And now we're going to make a clipping mask to change the texture of that font. I'll come up to File and I'll choose Place Embedded. And here I'll choose metal.tiff. There we go. It's a metal texture. So we have a bounding box here so we can place it within the image. I'll move it up here to the top half, right there. And I'll press Return to place it and remove the bounding box. Now I can see that I've placed this at the top of my layers stack here. So what I want to do is move it down just above the typecast text layer. And here I'm going to create a clipping mask. So I can choose Control and click and choose Create Clipping Mask. Very nice. Another way I can do that is by holding down the Option key and moving my cursor over the line between metal and typecast layers. It'll turn into that square with an arrow, and I click. That makes it a clipping mask as well. So what we've done in creating a clipping mask is restrict the metal layer to only interact with the typecast, the text layer. And now we'll give it a little depth to make it pop out a little more. I'm going to click on the typecast layer and I'll click on the Effects button and we will choose Inner Shadow. Make sure our blend mode is multiply, set the opacity to 48%, angle is 120, 18 distance, 0 choke, and 16 size. And now as I click the preview button, you can see the change that was made. It's giving a sense of dimensionality to this text. You can change any of these options, 100% opacity, 0. Change the angle of the shadow depending on your light source, and then select these other elements of the shadow. There are a variety of special effects that you can apply not only to text, but to other types of layers as well. I'll click OK here and File, Save. Now let's enter some text on a path. Creating type on a path puts your text along a path drawn with the shape tool or with the pen. And in this case, a path has already been created within this sample document. And so I will come up here to the top of the screen and choose Window, Paths to show that path. Here it is, Speech Path, and I'll click on it to show the path. Now I'll select T for the Type tool, and under the options up here at the top, I'll select Right Align. We'll choose Myriad Pro again for the font family. We'll choose Regular for its style. I'll come over here and make the tracking -10. The color of the text will be white. Just come up here and choose it. Or we can come here under RGB and choose 255, 255, 255 to make white. And we're going to click the all caps button to make all the text capital text. Now when I come back over the path here, I can see that the line has changed to the curve for path on my cursor. I'll click on it and I will say, what's new in 3D type? And I can see that I've made it black here. I need to change that color. We'll make it white. I can click up here. I can also come here to the RGB and choose 255, 255, and 255, which are the red, green, blue values for white. Click OK. I'll click off of the document to commit that text. And there we are. Now I'll come over here into the text again and I'll choose 3D type and I will change that weight to bold. I'll commit that change and come over here. Let's go ahead and copy that layer. Now we can't see anything yet because they're perfectly aligned on top of each other, but we can see that it says copy over here, so we know that there are two text layers. Now I'll choose Edit, Free Transform Path, and we will rotate the path about 15 degrees. And I will take my move tool and drag this up a little bit. Let's go ahead and hit the T for text again, and I will change this 3D type to web. Commit the change. There we are. Notice too that as we change this text here, it's also changed here on that copied layer. So as you change the text, the layer name will update. Now let's do that again. I'll go ahead and come here on the layers panel and drag this down to create another layer. What's new in 3D type copy. I will choose edit, free transform path. This one I'll do -15 degrees. And I will drag it down maybe here. Then I click done. And I'll change this to type effects. TYPEEFFECTS ? All right, and that's type on a path. Choose file, save. So the type on a path is kind of more exciting than straight lines. We can also warp type to make it even more dynamic. I'm going to come over to the layer panel and I'll choose the what's new in 3D type layer. Actually, I'll zoom in, Command +++. Hold down my space bar to get the pan tool, and I'll drag these over so that I can see them a little better. And now I'll go up to type and choose warp text. Now we have this warp text dialog box open up, and I'll enter some values here. So for style, I'll choose the wave option, and horizontal is great. For bend, let's say 33, and then -25, and then vertical distortion +5. Be a little subtle. And I'll click OK. So let's see what we just did. I'm coming over here to the history tab, and I'll show you the before and after. Now let's go ahead and change these other two. I've selected the what's new in web layer. I'll come up here and choose type and warp text. Let's see what we can do with the style flag. And I'll change these elements 80%, horizontal distortion 25 maybe, vertical distortion 10. All right, that looks neat. Then I will click the check mark to commit the change and come down to the what's new in type effects layer, choose type and warp text. And this time let's choose fish. Let's make the bend even more pronounced. Woo, 90 might be too much. Can't read it now. Let's do that. Horizontal distortion 50% and vertical distortion 10%. I click return to commit those changes, and here we are. I'll click Command 0 to place the whole image on the screen. And we can save our work. Command S. So far we've used point text because we've only had single lines of text to add. But design often calls for paragraphs of text, and so now we'll learn how to add a paragraph. Let's make sure we position our text in the right place by dragging out some guides for ourselves. So we'll put this about 1/4 of an inch from the right edge of our document. And I'll click and drag again in my ruler and drag this one down about 2 inches. When I get close to the round number, I can hold down my Shift key and it'll snap to that measurement. So that's 2 inches. When you're adding text in Photoshop, it could come to you through an email, it could come to you through document, shared online. Photoshop also allows you to leave notes in a document. To see the notes tool, you can come over here to the additional tools list and choose Note tool. Then we would come here in the document and be able to leave a note that someone down the line who opens up this document would be able to also read. Or in our case, a note has already been left for us. So I'll click the V key on my keyboard to get the move tool, and I'll come down here to this note icon. I'll hover over the edge of it, and I will double click to open the notes panel. Here we are. I can drag this out so we can see it. I'll choose Command C for copy. And I will come over here to the model layer and select the horizontal type tool. Now I've chosen the T tool for text. I'll come and hover my text cursor over this corner because I know where I want to put the text, and I will drag it out to be about 2 inches high by 6 inches long. And we can see the placeholder text that's been by default dropped in. We can see that the text layer was added above the model layer that we had selected, and that's the way it will work. Text will be placed above the layer that's selected. And now we'll choose Edit, Paste to paste the text from the note. I could have also chosen Command V on my keyboard to do that. Let's go ahead and select these lines, and I'll make some changes to the font. Myriad Pro regular is great. Let's make the font size 70 points. Nice and big. Leading will be 55 points. Leading is the space between lines. Tracking, space between letters, will be 50 points. And the color is white. So I've made the text too big for the box now. So I'm going to come on and click on the box here and drag it down to make sure that I can still see all of the text. Now I'll come here, I'll double click the word trend and make that bold. Then we'll take these secondary stories and click and drag to select all of them, make their font a little bigger, but not as much as the main headline. 28 leading or line spacing, and tracking will be 0. I'll go ahead and deselect the all caps. I clicked off of the document to deselect that text. That looks good, but let's do another little change. We'll make what's hot bold, and we'll make what's not bold. Click the check to commit. Now let's change the color of the word trend. I double click the word trend. I can come over here to the color panel and let's make it a little more blue. Okay, I'll just drag the hue slider here and select there. You can also enter specific RGB colors or hex, lab, HSP, etc. I'll click OK and the check mark to commit. One thing to know about type in a raster program like Photoshop. The type in Photoshop is saved as vector graphics while you are in the Photoshop document. If you were to save this as a TIFF or a JPEG, it would be rasterized, meaning that it would then be the little dots instead of the mathematical formulas that make up vector work. So be aware of that. So now we've completed this magazine cover. Now let's remove some of our helpers from the file. One neat tip about fonts is that Photoshop will give you similar fonts so that you don't have to kind of use the same old font, but get a similar look. So I'll come up here to the font menu selection and click on this 2 wavy lines here, which is show similar fonts. And so I click show similar fonts, and now I have a bunch of similar fonts. I can download any of these as part of the Creative Cloud subscription. And now with the move tool selected, I'll come over here to our notes. And when the cursor changes to the note icon, I'll control click and choose delete all notes. Are you sure? Yes, I am. Okay. Command S to save. Now I'll remove these guides. The keyboard shortcut is Command colon or semicolon, or you can choose View, Show, and deselect guides. Now we'll save this as a JPEG to deliver to a client or wherever it needs to go next. File, export, export as, choose format JPEG. I always make sure my JPEG quality is set to high to deliver the best possible image that we can, and I will choose export. I'll save this as 07 final and choose save. Now we have that file saved as a JPEG. And so there we are with text and typography in Photoshop. I particularly enjoy using clipping masks to apply imaginative backgrounds to text. So thanks for your attention. I can be reached if you have questions at japarker@atlantatech.edu. Thanks for watching.